It is carving out massive cathedrals of empty space in the dark. And when the roof of that cathedral finally fails, the result is one of the most terrifying phenomena in nature. It feels like you are completely alone, trapped in a silent, suffocating bubble, while the rest of the world keeps spinning. We need to understand why the Earth opens up, why our own engineering is making it worse, and why the solid ground isn't nearly as solid as you think. To understand how a city block can be erased in seconds, you have to look at the geology. It all starts with a specific type of landscape called karst. You see this in Florida, in China, in the Yucatan Peninsula. The bedrock here isn't granite or basalt. It's limestone, gypsum, or salt. These are rocks that have a fatal flaw. They dissolve. The process is slow, silent, and invisible. It starts with a single raindrop. As rain falls through the atmosphere, it grabs molecules of carbon dioxide. When it hits the ground and seeps into the soil, it picks up even more CO2 from decaying plants. This turns the water into a weak carbonic acid. To you and me, it's harmless. But to limestone, it is pure poison. Over thousands of years, this acidic water works its way into tiny hairline cracks in the bedrock. It eats away the calcium carbonate, molecule by molecule. The cracks become channels. The channels become tunnels, and the tunnels become massive, sprawling caverns. This creates a terrifying geological trap. Up on the surface, everything looks normal. The grass is green, the houses are level. But underneath, the foundation is being hollowed out. Geologists call this the cover collapse mechanism, and it is the most dangerous type of sinkhole. Picture a layer of thick, sticky clay sitting on top of that dissolving limestone. As the rock below melts away, the clay acts like a natural bridge, arching over the empty void. It holds up the soil, the road, and your house. But gravity is patient. Water keeps eating the rock. The void gets wider. The clay arch gets thinner. It's stretched to its absolute limit. Eventually, it reaches a tipping point. It could be triggered by a heavy rainstorm, or just the weight of a passing truck. The arch snaps. And because there is nothing below it but air, the collapse is instantaneous. But here is the twist. Nature takes thousands of years to load this gun. Humans are the ones pulling the trigger. While sinkholes are a natural phenomenon, the sudden catastrophic ones that swallow massive infrastructure are almost always accelerated by us. We are the architects of our own destruction. The first way we do this is by getting thirsty. We pump massive amounts of groundwater out of underground aquifers to drink and to irrigate crops. What we forget is that water takes up space. It provides structural support. It pushes back against the rock. When we overpump the aquifer, we drop the water table. We suck out the support. Suddenly, the roof of a cavern that has been stable for 10,000 years has to hold up its own weight, plus the weight of a city. It cracks and boom, collapse. The second trigger is our infrastructure itself. Look at Guatemala City. In 2010, the world watched in horror as a perfectly circular pit, 60 feet wide and 300 feet deep, opened up in the middle of the city. It looked like a portal to hell. It swallowed a 3-story factory. This wasn't just nature. This was a failure of engineering. Guatemala City is built on loose volcanic pumice, basically packed ash. It's weak stuff. But the real villain was the city's sewer system. The pipes were old. They were leaking. For months or even years, a hidden torrent of sewage was washing away the soil deep underground, creating a massive vacuum. Then, Tropical Storm Agatha hit. The surge of water was the final blow. The piping feature collapsed, and the city fell into the void we helped create. But nothing illustrates the personal horror of this geology like the story of Jeffrey Bush. It was February 28, 2013, in Seffner, Florida, ground zero for American sinkholes. It was a normal Thursday night. Jeffrey, 37 years old, was asleep in his bedroom. His brother Jeremy was down the hall. Suddenly, a sound like a car crash tore through the house. Then, a scream. Jeremy ran to his brother's room. He expected to see a fallen tree. He expected a fire. Instead, he opened the door and saw nothing. The bedroom floor was gone. The bed was gone. Jeffrey was gone. In their place was a dark, crumbling chasm, 20 feet wide, rapidly expanding. Jeremy didn't hesitate. He jumped into the hole, digging frantically through the shifting dirt, screaming his brother's name. But the earth was still moving. Police deputies had to physically pull Jeremy out of the pit to save his life. They never found Jeffrey Bush. The house was demolished, the ground was stabilized with gravel and concrete, and the site is now just a quiet, empty lot. It is a grave marker for a man who was taken by the planet itself. So is there any way to stop this? Can we see them coming? The scary truth is that predicting the exact moment of a collapse is nearly impossible. But we are getting better at spotting the ghosts in the machine. If you live in a danger zone, the earth usually gives you warnings. Doors stop closing properly. Windows get stuck. Cracks appear in your drywall in a stair-step pattern. Outside, you might see subsidence ponds, fresh puddles where water never used to collect. These are the groans of the earth before it breaks. On a larger scale, scientists are using military-grade tech to X-ray the ground. Ground-penetrating radar sends radio waves down into the soil to hunt for voids. And from space, we use INSAR technology, satellites that measure the elevation of the ground to the millimeter. They can see if a neighborhood is slowly sinking, year over year, alerting us to a developing void before the catastrophic failure happens. If we find a void, we can fight back. Engineers use compaction grouting. They drill deep into the earth and inject a thick, concrete-like mixture under high pressure. It fills the cracks, plugs the caverns, and solidifies the soil, creating a man-made bedrock to hold the surface up. But the ultimate lesson here isn't about engineering. It's about humility. We treat the ground as a static stage for our lives. We pave it, we pipe it, and we build monuments on it. But the story of the sinkhole is a reminder that the earth is dynamic. It is dissolving, shifting, and reacting to our presence. The ground beneath us is not a guarantee. It is a variable. And as we continue to expand our cities and drain our aquifers, we need to remember that sometimes the biggest threat to our civilization isn't coming from the sky. It's waiting right beneath our feet. Why did ancient civilizations drag tons of gold up to the highest mountain peaks? Why did they carve massive hollow chambers into the bedrock of the earth, sealing them with stones that weigh as much as a jumbo jet? For centuries, the answer was simple: greed. We told ourselves these were just vaults, safe deposit boxes for dead kings and their hoarded wealth. We looked at these structures, and all we saw was a target for grave robbers. We saw the gold, and we stopped asking questions. But what if we were wrong? What if the gold was just a distraction? New evidence is shattering the old story. It turns out, the greatest treasure hidden in these mountains wasn't metal. It was light. It was time. It was a sophisticated, mathematical understanding of the universe that rivals our own modern science. We are going to take a journey to the most mysterious sites on Earth, from the green hills of Ireland to the coastal deserts of Peru. We are going to unlock the doors to these ancient vaults and discover that they weren't tombs for the dead. They were machines for the living. To understand how we missed the point for so long, you have to understand the mindset of the early explorers. When Victorian archaeologists cracked open a mound or a pyramid, they were looking for the loot. They wanted the golden masks, the jeweled daggers, the shiny stuff that belongs in a museum. And sure, sometimes they found it, but because they were staring at the floor looking for gold, they forgot to look up. They ignored the architecture itself. They dismissed the precise angles of the walls, the specific orientation of the doorways, and the narrow shafts pointing at empty patches of sky. They assumed ancient people were primitive, driven by superstition, capable of brute force, but not engineering. They were arrogant, and their arrogance blinded us to the truth for 100 years. The crack in this old worldview started in Ireland, at a place called Newgrange. If you walk up to it today, it looks like a grassy flying saucer that crashed into the countryside 5,000 years ago. It's a massive mound, an acre wide, ringed by 97 colossal curbstones carved with hypnotic swirls. It was built around 3200 BC. That is older than Stonehenge. That is older than the Great Pyramids of Giza. For decades, experts said, it's a tomb. And technically, yes, they found bone fragments inside. But there was one detail that didn't fit the tomb theory. Above the main entrance, there is a weird, perfectly rectangular gap in the stone. They call it the roof box. Why build a skylight for a dead body? It didn't make sense. Until 1967, when an archaeologist named Michael O'Kelly decided to test a hunch. He went inside the tomb on the morning of the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, and he turned off his flashlight. He stood in the pitch-black, freezing cold, deep inside this man-made mountain, and he waited. 58 a.m., the sun broke the horizon, and a miracle happened. A single, razor-sharp beam of light shot through that roof box. It bypassed the entrance, traveled down the 60-foot passageway, and hit the floor of the inner chamber. As the sun rose, the beam widened. It crawled across the floor and illuminated the carvings at the very back of the room. For 17 minutes, the dark tomb was flooded with golden light. This wasn't an accident. This was a calendar. A clock built of stone. The builders of Newgrange had calculated the exact angle of the sun at its lowest point in the year and aligned thousands of tons of rock to capture it. They didn't build this place to store gold. They built it to capture the promise of spring. They built a resurrection machine. But Newgrange is just the beginning. Once we started looking for these alignments, we found them everywhere. Travel south to Portugal. Here, scattered across the landscape, are hundreds of dolmens, stone chambers dating back 6,000 years. Again, we thought they were just graves. But new research suggests they were actually prehistoric telescopes. Think about it. You are a Neolithic herdsman. You don't have a calendar app. You need to know exactly when to move your cattle to the mountains, or they will starve. Your signal is a specific star, Aldebaran, the red eye of the bull, rising on the horizon just before dawn. The problem is, twilight washes out the stars. It's hard to see. But if you crawl inside one of these long, narrow stone passages, something happens to your vision. The passage blocks out the peripheral light. Your eyes dilate in the darkness. The entrance frames a tiny, specific patch of the horizon. It acts like a lensless telescope, increasing the contrast and allowing you to see that faint star days before anyone standing outside could. This wasn't just practical, it was political. Imagine being the priest or the wizard who could sit in the dark and predict the future. Second, if you know someone walking through the valley of the shadow of death right now, share this with them. Spring is here. You aren't just a farmer anymore. You are a conduit to the gods. The gold in this vault was knowledge, and that knowledge was power. But the most mind-blowing example isn't in Europe. It's in the coastal desert of Peru, at a place called Chanquillo. This site was a mystery for years. It's a fortified hilltop complex, but the main feature is bizarre. A spine of 13 stone towers running along the ridge of a hill. For the one drowning in anxiety, station your peace at the door of their mind. Maybe it's a temple? It took until the 21st century for someone to finally stand in the right spot and look at them. When you stand at a specific observation point to the west, the 13 towers line up perfectly with the path of the sun throughout the year. On the summer solstice, the sun rises to the left of the first tower. On the winter solstice, it rises to the right of the last one. Throughout the year, the sun moves slot by slot, tower by tower,